Hello, my name is Patricia. I'm currently navigating the challenges of a demanding career while also raising my son, Anthony. Although I've recently married, my dedication to my profession remains unchanged. As the president of a thriving small business, I was fortunate to return from maternity leave without facing any salary reduction, thanks to my dependable team who managed the company during my absence. Yet I'm grappling with a more complex and personal dilemma that involves my mother-in-law, Emma. After the death of my father-in-law, Emma moved in with my husband Larry, Anthony, and me. Originally, her stay was supposed to be brief, but it soon became apparent she had no plans of leaving. One day, I gathered the courage to gently ask Emma about her long-term plans. Surprisingly, she responded by raising her voice and crying, accusing me of wanting her out of our home. This left me both shocked and confused. Larry, having heard our conversation, rushed to console Emma. Once she calmed down, he suggested she retreat to her room. Alone with me, Larry confronted me, accusing me of being insensitive toward his mother. I tried to clarify that my question was simply an inquiry, not a request for her to leave, but Larry saw it differently and sided with Emma. Reluctantly, I withdrew my question, troubled by the thought of how long Emma might continue to stay without a clear understanding between us. Emma soon began to act as if our home was solely hers, often overlooking my comfort. Then, unexpectedly, she announced her decision to give up her ancestral home and move all her possessions into our house. That day, a moving truck arrived, driven by Tyler, a no-nonsense yet amiable mover, signaling yet another shift in our household dynamics. This move made me realize the situation might be more permanent than I had initially thought, and it brought new challenges into our already complex living arrangement. I was completely taken aback, my jaw dropping in disbelief. It was supposed to be a special day for Anthony, with a family outing planned to the amusement park. However, Larry abruptly changed our plans, declaring it a day dedicated to unpacking. Anthony, who had been eagerly anticipating our trip to the amusement park, looked back and forth between me and Larry with a near tearful expression, seeking reassurance about our plans. In these sudden changes, I comforted my son, telling him, "Don't worry, we'll definitely go to the amusement park, Anthony." Larry, however, seemed unsure and asked, "Are we going to play instead of unpacking?" I firmly replied that the trip to the amusement park was a long-standing plan, and breaking a promise to our child for the sake of unpacking was unthinkable. I stood firm in my belief that keeping our commitment to Anthony was crucial. The amusement park visit had been scheduled over a month in advance, and we had been looking forward to it, expecting to spend a delightful day as a family. It was completely unexpected when my mother-in-law decided that today was the day she would move her belongings into our house, throwing our plans into disarray. Despite the surprise, I prioritized our family outing over the unpacking. However, my mother-in-law emotionally reacted to my decision, crying excessively and claiming, "Patricia doesn't want to live with me. That's why she's prioritizing her child over me." Tyler, the mover, noticing that the conversation was going nowhere, chimed in, "Well, unpacking can be done anytime. Isn't keeping a promise with your family more important? Also, did you actually inform your daughter-in-law about the move?" His rational words seemed to embarrass my mother-in-law, whose face turned red. Larry just glared at me, torn and uncertain how to react, seemingly leaning towards prioritizing his mother's needs over our planned family outing. Nevertheless, I took Anthony's hand and headed to the amusement park as promised, creating a clear rift between my husband and me. Later, in an unrelated conversation, my mother-in-law nonchalantly asked if I could stay home the upcoming weekend, seemingly oblivious to any plans I might have already made. A wave of irritation welled up inside me, but I managed to maintain my composure and responded with a neutral tone. "Why do you ask?" I inquired, striving to mask my annoyance. She shared her wish to have quality time with Anthony, claiming that my constant presence made it unfair for her. It was clear she had overheard my conversation about planning a mall outing with Anthony for the upcoming weekend. She then suggested that I should skip the trip, proposing that Larry, Anthony, and herself could go without me, leaving me to look after the house on my own. I replied, suggesting a compromise. If you're keen on visiting the mall, why don't we all go together? I hoped this would keep the family united and also allow me to keep a close eye on Anthony, particularly around Emma, whose behavior had recently raised some doubts in my mind. Emma seemed taken aback by my suggestion and displayed a mix of reluctance and disappointment. Voicing her displeasure openly was not an option for her, and with evident reluctance she agreed to the new plan. At the mall, I was picking out clothes for Anthony, mindful of how quickly children grow. I chose slightly larger sizes to accommodate his rapid growth. Suddenly, Emma approached and questioned my choice. "Don't you know his size? This size would fit Anthony perfectly right now." She had picked a size that was exactly Anthony's current fit. I tried to explain that children grow quickly and it's practical to buy clothes they can grow into. However, Emma quickly retorted, "When he grows, just buy new ones. Don't be so stingy." I was internally taken aback by her blunt attitude. Continuously buying perfectly fitting clothes seemed impractical and wasteful given our family budget. However, before I could respond further, Larry intervened, stating, "I'm paying the bills. If you're stingy, it reflects poorly on me." Ultimately, Larry ended up paying for the clothes Emma had chosen. Afterward, Anthony wore those clothes for a short while, but within a few months, he began complaining that they were too tight and stopped wearing them altogether. Emma saw this, and her face showed a complicated mix of realization and disappointment. Deciding to manage the overflow of barely used clothes in our home, many of which Anthony had quickly outgrown, I chose to donate them. I gave them to a mother friend of mine, whom I had gotten close to at the daycare center attached to our company. This not only helped clear out our space, but also supported someone who could use the clothes right away. She was overjoyed to receive the clothes, and seeing her happiness truly warmed my heart. However, my use of the daycare center seemed to be something my mother-in-law, Emma, could not accept. She did not hide her disapproval, questioning me with a stern tone. "Why would you leave Anthony with someone else when I'm right here at home? And working while having a child, that's detrimental to his upbringing." Her words cut deep, but I felt the need to assert my position. "Actually, I need to work too. Our finances wouldn't make ends meet otherwise," I replied, maintaining my composure despite her critical tone. Unperturbed, my mother-in-law further criticized, "Just how much do you think your earnings amount to? I'm sure Larry brings home much more than you. You wouldn't need to work for us to live comfortably. You must be incompetent at your job," she accused, her words stinging me deeply. At that moment, I wondered if Larry had ever mentioned to her that I was the president of our company. Frustrated and needing to set the record straight, I retorted, "I actually earn more than Larry, you know," my voice carrying a mix of confidence and a hint of sarcasm. Little did I know this remark would ignite a fiery response from Emma. "How dare you speak like that? To openly undermine your husband is unforgivable. Not only does she barely manage to care for our child, but she also has Larry assist with the household chores. And now she boasts about earning more than her husband. Can't she even show the slightest respect for him?" Emma's voice escalated, blending shock and anger. Larry, hearing the commotion, entered the room with a look of concern. "What's going on?" he asked, his presence seemingly a form of support for Emma, who continued with even more vigor. "Tell me, Larry, you don't need Patricia, do you? If it were just you, me, and Anthony, we could live happily. This woman's presence only makes our lives more constrained, doesn't it?" Larry, slightly taken aback, responded hesitantly. His lackluster reply seemed to embolden Emma. "Then let's go for a divorce," she exclaimed, retrieving a divorce form from the shelf. It appeared that Emma had been harboring the intention of suggesting a divorce between me and Larry all along. Internally grappling with the turmoil, I realized that I no longer needed a husband who prioritized his mother over his own family. I needed to find a new way to navigate this increasingly complex relationship. Determined not to lose custody and faced with Larry's heated accusations that my presence was no longer needed in our family, I maintained my composure. "I understand, Larry," I said calmly as I signed the divorce papers. This act marked the end of a relationship that had become untenable. The family we had created, me, my husband Larry, and our son Anthony, had changed dramatically ever since my mother-in-law Emma moved in with us. The tension in our home had been building steadily. Emma had a way of disregarding our plans, which recently included forcing me to help her unpack instead of enjoying a long-planned trip to the amusement park with Anthony. When I started preparing for the move, she suddenly whisked Larry away on a hot spring vacation. Anthony, having seen her dismissive treatment towards me, chose to stay behind with me rather than join them, still upset over the nearly ruined amusement park outing. Respecting Anthony's decision, Larry and Emma proceeded with their vacation, leaving us behind. During their absence, I took decisive action. I packed only mine and Anthony's belongings and arranged for them to be moved by Tyler the mover. I left Larry a letter clearly stating that he would be responsible for the $5,600 monthly rent for our house henceforth. I also mentioned that I had hired a lawyer to handle the custody battle and property division. Anthony and I then stepped into our new life. Upon their return from the week-long vacation, Larry and Emma immediately contacted me. Larry, surprised and angry, exclaimed over the phone, "Patricia, did you take Anthony with you? Mom is upset. Shouldn't I have custody?" Realizing he hadn't read the letter, I asked him, "Could you please read the letter I left on the living room table?" The living room, a space I had designed with great care to exude warmth, now held the letter that carried significant implications for our future. Larry harbored serious concerns about its contents. "If it's that letter, Mom said she'd check it first and she's already read it," Larry replied, clearly bewildered and still heavily influenced by his mother's opinions. I then explained the contents of the letter to him. "It states that you will be responsible for the $5,600 monthly rent of this house going forward. It also states that I won't give up custody of Anthony and outlines our plans for the division of property." This clarification was crucial as it laid the foundation for the legal and personal boundaries I was setting in place, marking a definitive step towards a new beginning for Anthony and me. After hiring a lawyer, I confronted Larry about the $5,600 monthly rent for our upscale rental home, a sum he shockingly seemed unaware of until now. His cavalier attitude towards financial management had long been a source of stress for me. Originally, I had opposed renting such an expensive house, but Larry had insisted vehemently, and in an intense disagreement, he prevailed. Consequently, the responsibility of covering the hefty rent fell entirely on me, while Larry was supposed to manage other living expenses. However, Larry had a habit of spending recklessly, often leaving me to pick up the slack when bills piled up. This pattern extended to his mother, Emma, who frequently found herself short at store checkouts, calling me to bail her out. I was disheartened by their combined financial irresponsibility. Larry prioritized his hobbies and desires over essential expenses, leaving me to cover any shortfalls. For a long time, my entire salary went towards household expenses, leaving me with little personal savings and a mounting sense of frustration. The prospect of divorce suddenly offered a silver lining, escaping the oppressive $5,600 monthly rent. Luckily, the lease was in Larry's name, releasing me from future financial ties to him and Emma. Yet when I informed Larry that he would need to continue paying the rent, he was incredulous. "Why should I pay? I don't live there anymore and we're divorced. Emma even told me to leave the house, so I have no obligation to pay rent," he argued. In a desperate plea for help, Larry reached out to me, but Emma interjected with unwarranted confidence, asserting, "Even without you, we can manage the rent. The amount you paid is nothing for Larry. I was astounded by her delusion. Larry, with a net income of around $3,300 and negligible savings, was unable to afford the rent on his own. Emma's misconception of Larry's financial health led her to grossly overestimate his capabilities. Realizing the impracticality of their situation, I suggested they consider terminating the lease and discussing alternatives with the real estate agent. Emma dismissed my advice abruptly, leaving me no choice but to end the conversation. Frustrated, I hung up the phone, worried about the unstable environment Larry and Emma were creating. Anthony and I had since moved into a cozy apartment in a neighborhood close to my workplace, providing us with a peaceful and convenient living situation. About a month after the divorce, Larry and Emma unexpectedly appeared at my workplace, causing a scene at the entrance and demanding to see the boss, which, ironically, was me. While out for lunch with Anthony at a family restaurant, I was completely taken aback upon our return to find Emma and Larry causing a scene at the reception of my company, which conveniently houses a childcare center. This setup has always allowed me to keep Anthony close even while at work. Their unexpected presence left me bewildered, especially since I had been anticipating a response from a meeting arranged by their lawyers. Emma, tears streaming in what appeared to be more of a manipulative display than genuine distress, pleaded with me, "Patricia, can't you just come back home? I understand you were the one providing financially, but enough with this. Soul killing, it's time to put an end to this." It was evident that Emma thought her tearful tactics would sway me as they might others, trying to cast me as the villain in this unfolding drama. In response to her pleas, Larry interjected, "Hiring a lawyer? What were you thinking? This is a matter between us as a couple. Anthony would surely be happier with both his parents together." Despite his words, the reality was stark. Larry, a father who had repeatedly put his mother's needs above those of his son, was only compounding Anthony's distress. Weighed down by the situation but resolved to maintain my stance, I turned to Larry and stated firmly, yet calmly, "We're divorced. We're strangers now. If you have something to say, please do it through a lawyer." Upon hearing this, Larry seemed to grasp the futility of his direct appeals to me. He then turned to Anthony, who was standing beside his grandmother, and began speaking in a coaxing tone. "Hey, Anthony, you'd prefer to stay with your dad and grandma, right?" Larry said, attempting to influence Anthony's feelings. "Absolutely, it must be lonely just with your mom, always busy with work," added Emma, chiming in with her persuasive attempt. This unsettling exchange frightened Anthony, who then hid behind me, seeking comfort and protection. The scene highlighted the emotional tug-of-war he was being subjected to, a painful reminder of the complexities we were navigating in our new reality. Anthony burst into tears, loudly declaring, "I don't like you both, you're mean." His genuine crying had a more profound impact than his grandmother's contrived sobs, striking a chord with everyone present. Employees from nearby offices quickly gathered, drawn by the noise. They stepped in and firmly ushered Larry and his mother out of the building, restoring some peace to the chaotic scene. Relieved to be free from the immediate stress, I let out a deep sigh of relief. Later, through my lawyer, I sent a stern warning to Larry and his mother. If they ever showed up unannounced at my office again, or followed Anthony and me, I would not hesitate to involve the police. This threat seemed to make them reconsider their actions. Larry and his mother, who had been living in a home with a $5,600 monthly rent, found themselves forced to abandon their upscale lifestyle for a more modest apartment. The real challenge for Larry began soon after. He had often bragged to his colleagues about his lavish living situation, and now, fearful of them discovering his move to a humble apartment, he impulsively quit his job without discussing it with his mother. This rash decision only fueled his mother's fury. Now, out of necessity, both had to find new jobs. Despite their employment, their days were marred by constant bickering and blaming each other for their downgraded circumstances. They struggled to make ends meet and found it difficult to keep up with child support payments. As for me, I continued to thrive in my career. Anthony, growing up without his father's consistent presence, developed into a strong and dependable young man. In my heart, I always knew that even without such an unreliable father figure, I was fully capable of raising my son admirably. Our lives, though changed, moved forward with resilience and a focus on the future.